Get my 6. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the most amazing homesteading channel on planet Earth. Nothing funny about it, it's facts. That typically doesn't have anything whatsoever to do with homesteading. Homesteading off the grid. And today, it kind of has to do with homesteading because we just featured our clearly disrespectful, ungrateful, and entitled ducks laughing at the hand that feeds them. Or it, or he, she, or they. All right, now listen. Have you ever wondered what happens if you touch a ghost? Well, today you're going to find out because I'm going to tell you it's the week of Halloween. We've got one heck of a Halloween flavored story for you. It's about what happens when you touch a ghost. And we're going to make a 100% honest effort to prove it by catching a ghost and then touching it. What's that, Crazy Lake? Hey, even the ducks aren't laughing at that because this is serious business. We're going to catch it in a trap. And this video is sponsored by Beaver, who sent us a trap to catch the ghost, kind of, sort of. It's actually like a predator trap for if you do have obnoxious ducks and chickens and whatnot. You got to protect your whatnots. And this Beaver trap is a really good way to do it. I'm going to show you quickly in less than a minute how you use it. Yes, believe it or not, this is a trap. So we use these humane traps. This is one from Cabela's. We have these around here because we do have raccoons, possum, foxes, try to get our birds, and occasionally we catch the neighbors' cats that are left out all night. All these animals are released humanely. The cat here, because I guess it lives somewhere around here. We've caught it 3 times now. Haven't caught it since we actually showed it in the video recently. So to whatever neighbor of mine that watches my videos and now keeps your cat indoors, yay! All right, but the raccoons, the foxes, the possums, we will relocate them several miles away. So that way we don't have to dispatch them. And also these traps give me a good opportunity to have a good old-fashioned talking to with these critters and tell them, look, I know you're just doing what nature has intended for you to do. You've got to capture your own food and all that, etc., etc. I'm not going to judge you like the yuppie types around here judge me for, you know, harvesting a few deer off my property for my food, because like these predators I catch in the cages, I understand where food comes from. There are things below us on the food chain. And, you know, so I give them a good talking to, tell them not to do it again, and then I release them 3 or 4 miles away. So Beaver contacted me and asked if I would like to demo one of their cages, and I thought, well, why not? I already have some of these, but here's the biggest feature to these cages. They're a third of the price, and this isn't to knock Cabela's, but their cages are about $100 a pop. You can get Beavers for $30-something. I think it's like $38. Now, when it comes to it, it's going to come in a box. It's going to be a very flat box, and you look at it and you're like, what? That don't look like no cage. Well, the scariest part of this is not, you know, the ghost you can catch in it, which is what we're going to try to do, but when you bring it out of the box, it might pop up on you. Watch this. Get this thing out of here as best you can. This is a spring-loaded trap. I'm going to show you what all these things hanging off are for here in a minute, but you got to unfold the trap, and it might pop up on you. I'm doing it in a controlled fashion. I would recommend this. Like if you just let it go, it could pop up because of the spring-fed door right here. So basically, it comes up like this. Now you've got a cube, got your cube trap. Now, let's see. This is the top. There's a handle on the top. Okay, so this is the top. Here's the back. Now you've got to bring this back door down, and this back will become the front once the animal is trapped. So you just pull this down. See how easy that is to do? And now look, that metal rod that I took out earlier, this is how you hold the door shut, because once you have, this is the trigger plate. The animal's going to go in on this end. I swear, they think everything I do is a joke. If I didn't do this, I wouldn't have the ability to buy your feed. So shut the duck up. All right. That's your job, chickens. Shut the duck up. So this is going to be the front once the trap is set, but let's view it as the back for now. So let's come around this way. You're like, that ain't going to hold nothing. The animal gets, neighbor's cat gets stuck in there. Just walk right out the back door. Well, that's where this comes in. You'll see that there are these little silver stainless steel rings on here, and on each side of the lower back there's a little tab here with a hole in it. Well, you stick the unbent end into the first hole. You go through to see, this is what you're securing the door, and so what you want to do is as you go through, you want to make sure, and you want to be on the outside of this thing, make sure to get the rod through those little stainless steel holes, rivets, because that adds extra security in case you get one of them big old 8-pound raccoons in there. All right, might be a little stronger than most. Then it goes through the other hole on the back side. See that? So this is entirely in the hole, and then you lock it in place by way of this hook on the end. You just simply grab part of the frame like there and pull it like this. See how easy that is? So now the back, for now, which will become the front later, is secure. Flip it around, and this is how you set it. You will see that there's a, where'd that dangly rod go? Here it is. It's dangling down here. Don't let the dingle dangle in the dirt. Who was in the Army? You remember that one from basic training? All right, so here's this rod. This is the rod that you're going to use to set this trap door and to set the trigger plate back here in the back. So this is spring loaded, so you just kind of got to pull this down like this. See that? And then push, and then pull this up. It's like a push and pull type motion to where you get this to come up like this. Okay, now you'll notice here on the side, you're going to have like this little wiggly jiggly thingamadoodle right here. This is where you attach this, like such, and then you push that down all the way, and that does two things. It holds the door open for the vermin to be able to come in front, or the neighbor's cat, beautiful calico. If it's a male, it's actually quite valuable. Trust me, you don't want the wrong hillbilly redneck out here trapping that thing. They might sell it on the open market. Male calicos are worth about $1,000 a pop, because calicos only like 1 out of 10 are males. Okay, and breeders need them. FYI, yuppies who are letting your cats out all night. All right, so and this is now, not only is the door open, but the trap plate is set. So what happens? You put your piece of gluten-free whatever in here. Just kidding. Got to use real food like meat to lure the predator in. It comes in, and when it steps on the trigger door, boom, it's trapped. Brah, it ain't going nowhere until you determine that it is. So you come, you pick it up. Let's say it's not the neighbor's cat. Let's say it's a little old possum. And listen, there are people out there who actually believe possums don't kill chickens. Let me tell you, anybody that believes a possum doesn't kill a chicken has never had chickens. They absolutely do. We had one get 8 of our birds earlier in the year, and we had to replace them with some other birds. Listen, here's how you can tell the various kills. Foxes, you won't see any feathers or nothing. They just carry them away and eat them somewhere else. You might have a feather or two where it just got the original snatch. Raccoons will eat almost the entire bird right there and leave whatever's left. Possums will only eat the head and the egg pouch, which is in the top of the breast. So if you're looking around in the morning and it's like, what is eating only half of my chickens? Because it ate, let's say 3 hens, ate the heads and just the top part and left the rest, the best part, the legs, the thighs, it's possum. They're going after the eggs. All right, so let's say we caught Mr. and Mrs. Possum in here. Give it our good talking to. Listen, biznitch, that's my chickens, my eggs. Don't you ever do that again. Don't you come around here no more. Take it out 5 miles away, give it another good talking to. You simply unhitch this little hook, pull this out, and stand back. The thing will probably run out of the cage on its own. You reach down there, wear gloves while you're doing this. Make sure the thing doesn't bite you. But then this just pulls right out. Shara, and you release the vermin. All right, so there you go. The link to this very humane, able to give them a good old talking to vermin / neighbor's cat trap will be in the description box below. Now, let's get up in them there woods and let me tell you, and hopefully, if we can catch one in these traps, show you what happens when you touch a ghost. Get my 6 again. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the most awesomest homesteading channel on the planet that typically doesn't have anything to do with homesteading whatsoever, homesteading off the grid. As you can tell by the sounds of the nightlife, it's almost dark. We're in the woods, our trap is set. We're attempting to catch a ghost. Why? So we can touch it, to see if it's true what they say about what happens when you touch a ghost. Tonight's super creepy Halloween reading comes from October Nights Part 2, 31 More Tales for the Halloween Season, written by me, this guy. See, there I am back when I used to visit the barber shop with my beautiful bride Dearly, aka Giggly Girl. She's so photogenic. How can anybody so beautiful not be? So you get my 6 means watch my back. Listen, we're trying to catch a ghost. Doesn't mean that a him, her, it, or they. And by that, no, I don't mean some woke person with blue hair. I mean, potentially, Bigfoot Sasquatch might make an appearance as well. Get my 6. These books are available, by the way, on Amazon in print and Kindle. And you can get autographed copies of this, as well as some of my other books from our Etsy store. The links to both books are in the description below, as well as the link to the Critter Trap. Now, to our evening story. Since we began the first October Nights with a true ghost tale from my days many years ago as a door-to-door salesman, I've sold investments, we will do the same here. Well, this might not be the very first story in this collection, but it's close enough to the beginning. This is actually story number 2 in this book of 31 short story collections. Once, while making my way up and down an old country road in Virginia, during the peak of the summer heat, mind you, I'd reached what would be my last prospect for the day. I'd always made at least 25 contacts per day, and the house I was approaching, an old brick rancher that sat at the end of a lengthy gravel drive, was to be my 25th, should I be fortunate enough to have someone answer the door. Lady Luck was with me on this hot day, and an old man of nearly 80 years old at the time answered the door. I told him who I was and what I was doing, selling stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, and he told me to have a seat on his screened-in front porch, and he'd be back right out with a glass of cold lemonade. Have I mentioned I love living in the South? Anyway, when the older man came back with our drinks, I introduced myself and I told him what I was doing in a little more detail. He was straightforward with me from the beginning, and he told me that he would never invest any money with me because he was the retired board member of a bank and he kept all of his investments with his former employer. However, he said that he appreciated my work ethic and that he'd think of some people he could send my way to reward my efforts. Have I mentioned I love living in the South? Anyway, the old man sent me several clients over the next couple of weeks, but it was a few months later, in that magical month of October, that he did me the biggest favor. Not only did he personally take me out to meet his nephew, a recently retired high school history teacher that was also a 6th-generation cattle farmer who owned hundreds of acres of land in our area, land that had been in his family for the same amount of time his family had been farmers, and therefore paid for long ago, and who had more old, moldy money lying around in the basement and under couch cushions than anyone could imagine. That's an old Southern way of saying this old boy was rich. "Come on in," the man's nephew, Scott said, when we stepped out of my car. "We've been waiting on you." I walked into Scott's living room along with him and his uncle. "So you're an investment man, are you?" Scott said. "Yes, sir," I said. "There'll be none of that sir stuff around here," Scott said. "Just call me Scott." "Okay," I said, shaking his hand just before sitting. Scott lived in an old farmhouse that was a century and a half old. The house did not have central air, but since it was already October, it wasn't necessary. The screened windows were open and a light breeze was coming into the house, keeping everything perfectly comfortable. "How's your people?" Scott's uncle asked Scott to kick off the conversation. Scott went on about how his wife was excited to retire the following year and of how his brother-in-law was back in prison and of how one of his cows died while giving birth the week before. They'd been able to save the calf, though. "So you're an investment man, are you?" Scott asked again, looking at me, once having given his uncle the update on his people and the one cow. "I sure am," I said, "and I understand you are a retired history teacher." "That's right," Scott said. "I always had an interest in history. Ever since I was a kid listening to my elders talk about the good old days. Why, there's so much we can learn about ourselves and where we're going if we look to the past. Take, for instance," Scott started going on and on about something of historical significance, but I quickly became distracted by two beautiful girls, who were standing just off behind him in the next room, the kitchen. They were waving their hands as if trying to signal me to go to them. "Do you mind if I use your restroom?" I asked Scott. I could see that there was a restroom on the other side of the kitchen. He stopped mid-sentence. I think he was talking about the Eisenhower U.S. Interstate Highway System. And he said, "Well, sure, there's one just through the kitchen there." I got up and went into the kitchen. There's my ducks. They heard me. I got up and went into the kitchen, heading for the restroom. Come out into the barn with us, one of the girls said. Christy, I would later learn her name was. You're going to love this, the other girl, whose name was Misty, said. They were apparently twins, and like I said already, quite beautiful. How old are you girls, I asked. 17, they said in unison. I'm freaking 26, I said, and I was at the time. I'm not going anywhere alone with you two. What's going on in there, Scott said from the living room. Girls, you leave this nice investment man alone. He's here to work, not babysit. He's back, Misty said, walking into the living room. Grandpa Greg. Oh, for Pete's sake, Scott said, not now. He still comes around here, Scott's uncle said. Every now and then, Scott said, especially in October. Is Greg your father or your father-in-law? I asked Scott, walking back into the living room and into a conversation I obviously wasn't following too well. I never did go to the restroom, but I hadn't needed to anyway. Folks, my phone just stopped recording, and I started it again, and it stopped again as I heard footsteps right behind me, and I started it again, and the footsteps have stopped. Keep getting my 6. Things are getting creepy. No, he's dead, Scott said. He's a ghost. The ghost of my great-great-great-grandpa Greg. What? I said. He's out in the barn right now if you want to see him, one of the girls said. You ever seen a ghost? Scott asked me. I thought back on just the year before when I'd seen the ghost of the old hotel owner when I'd been out prospecting for business, but chose not to mention it. That story, by the way, is in part 1 of this, available on Amazon. I'm not sure, I said, rather than saying no, which would have been a lie. Well, Scott said, you're in for a treat if you want to go out to the barn and see old Greg. He's a live wire. Well, I mean, not literally because he's dead, but he's all over the place. I didn't know at the time if I was being played or not, but before I could answer, Scott and his uncle were already rising from their chairs. I guess we were on our way out to the barn to see the ghost of great-great-great-grandpa Greg. Now, Scott began, after we'd left the house and were making our way through a field to the barn about 40 yards away. Since you've never seen a ghost, I reckon it's probably a pretty safe bet to say you don't know what happens if you touch a ghost. I have no idea, I said. If you touch a ghost, Misty and Christy said once again in unison, it disappears and it never comes back around to haunt you again. Really? I said. Yep, Scott said, and we're going to head out here to the barn and prove it this time. Old Grandpa Greg's been coming around long enough. It's time to send him a packing. We all headed out to the barn. Even Scott's aged uncle was tagging along. The girls ran off in front of us to get there first because they were really excited, not only to show me the ghost of their great-great-great-grandfather Greg, but because they thought that since I was there giving them an extra set of hands, this might be the time they'd actually catch him. That's what they'd told me as we marched toward the barn, and they'd told me that in unison. These girls were the spitting image of those old double mint twins from those chewing gum commercials I used to see when I was a kid, except prettier. We entered the barn through the already open doors, and damned if my eyes didn't deceive me. At least that's what I thought at first. I looked up to the hayloft, and there, bouncing up and down and laughing while he did, was this grayish, whitish figure of great-great-great-grandpa Greg. He was singing an old tune I didn't recognize while he jumped up and down laughing. You cross the creek, then I'll cross the creek, and we'll both get there together, he sang. Then we'll take off our clothes so they can all dry out, and then we'll cuddle up and stay warm together. Now you cut that kind of singing out in front of my girls, great-great-great-grandpa Greg, Scott screamed. Make me, the ghost, still dancing and jumping and laughing and singing, said, but you gotta catch me first. Here's what you do, Scott said, whispering in my ear. The girls are sneaking up on both sides of the loft, you see. I could see them climbing up ladders on opposite sides of the loft. Now, you go straight back and take that ladder that leads up the back of the loft, Scott said. When all three of you are up there, bum rush that son of a gun, and if he jumps off, why, I'll be here to grab him. One of us is bound to touch him this time. Okay, I said, and I began walking back to the ladder that led up to the loft from the backside. I remember thinking to myself, am I really doing this? Am I really in some old barn out in the middle of rural Virginia getting ready to climb up a ladder to try to touch a ghost? By the time I was halfway up the ladder, I'd convinced myself this was all some kind of joke. I was just being put on. These country bumpkins knew I was coming because Scott's uncle had planned it all out, so this was just some kind of elaborate trick to play on the investment man. You ready? Misty and Christy said to me when they saw my head pop up over the floorboards on the loft. I guess so, I said, and then I looked to the front and center of the loft, and old Greg, or whoever the hell he was still there, jumping up and down, laughing and singing his old perverted song from a century and a half ago. I remember thinking at the time they must have just dusted this old guy down with baby powder or something in order to give him that ghostly appearance. Now, the girls yelled in unison, and all three of us bum-rushed our target, and just before we reached him, all three of us with our hands outstretched to touch him, of course, he jumped off the loft. He was sailing through the air, heading right towards Scott and his uncle, who'd finally caught up with us to the barn, and he was still laughing and singing his old perverted song as he did. We got you now, you old son of a bitch, Scott's uncle shouted, just before Greg landed in the arms of the men below the loft. He vanished into thin air. To this day, I would have never believed a story such as this myself if I hadn't been there and seen it with my own eyes. Son of a bastard, Scott shouted, obviously frustrated that he'd been fooled by the ghost of great-great-great-grandpa Greg yet again. And just after he'd said this, we heard old Greg cackling from somewhere on his side of the veil. We could not see him, we could only hear him. He was sure to be back at some point. The girls and I climbed back down the ladders we'd come up and joined the men below. We all began walking back to the old farmhouse, and I said, maybe we'll get him next time, already counting myself in for the next chase. Are you sure he'll disappear forever if we get him next time? Well, he's supposed to, Scott said. Only problem is no one's ever touched him, so we ain't been able to prove that theory. Heck, we don't know anyone that's ever touched any ghost, so who knows if it even works. We got back in the house, and Scott said he needed to get back to cutting hay. He walked over to the side table of the living room, slid open a thin drawer beneath it, and then pulled out his checkbook. He wrote out a check for $10,000 and then asked me who to address the check to in order to invest it in an account with me. I told him the name of my firm, and he filled it in on the check, handed it to me, and then said, here, just put this in something good. It's a true story, I'm telling you. I said, okay, and then took his personal info needed to open his account. His uncle and I rode back to his uncle's house together. And then from there, after dropping off Scott's uncle, I went back to my office and opened Scott's account and put all $10,000 of his dollars he'd given me into Bank of America stock. It's probably worth 5 or 6 times that amount now. This was about 20 years ago. It would do exceptionally well for him over the years, and in time, he would go on to invest nearly $500,000 with me and all. I visited Scott and his girls many times after that, and I eventually met Scott's wife. It was easy to see where their daughters had gotten their good looks. It wasn't from Scott. I never saw the ghost of great-great-great-grandpa Greg again, though Scott's let me know he still comes around regularly, always dancing and singing his dirty songs, and he's always challenging someone to try to touch him. But to this day, no one ever has. I keep my eyes open for oddities around me, and when I think I see something, I reach out to touch it. Either the oddities elude me, or I'm just seeing things, because I always end up seeing them again later. So, if anyone reading this is willing to help me test the theory, please feel free to do so. The next time you see a ghost, just for kicks and giggles, not to mention confirmation of the theory, please, pretty please, try to reach out and grab it so once and for all the world will really know what happens when you touch a ghost. The end. Now, let's go see if we got one in our trap, and let's see if we can touch it and see what happens if we do. There's something in here. We got one. Let's touch it and see what happens. Whoa!